One of my all-time favorite blocks is honestly a jeweled box, and that is what has inspired this month's tutorial for the 2025 Quilt Along. Hey friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and today we are working on block number 11 for my 2025 Quilt Along. If you don't know what this is, it's a block of the month that is entirely free to join, and you can do it whenever you want. It doesn't have to be in 2025. If you're just hearing about it now, it's never too late to go back and get the patterns and watch the other tutorials to get caught up. This month, we're going to make a block that I am calling Criss-Cross. As I said, it is inspired by the jeweled box design. I love the way that block looks. And so that's what we're going to put together. Do not let the intricacy of this block fool you. It is easy to do, and I'm going to show you how one step at a time. But before we do, let's take a look at the fabric that Cotton Cut sent me this month and figure out which of those fabrics are going to make this block. Yeah, I know. You already know which ones I'm going to work with, but I want to show you all the fabric I got anyway. Oh yeah, and before I jump into talking about that fabric, let's talk about the fabric that's up here behind me. The quilt is not already done, but I know somebody out there is going to ask, and so I just want to let you know that this is not my quilt. It is Mary's quilt. We started a chandelier quilt when we were together in April. This is hers. She has decided to take a little bit longer to finish it because she wanted to add a piano key border all the way around, and as you can see, we've got piano key border on the left and right. We're just waiting for a little bit of extra fabric to come in so she can put the top and bottom border on it. I don't know what fabric line she used, but I'm sure she does. And I will get that information and put it in the description box down below because I am sure somebody out there is going to ask. The block we're going to put together this month is called Criss-Cross, and this block was inspired by a jewel box block. I love those blocks, and I thought it would look cool to do kind of like this 3D effect. The first fat quarter we have from Cotton Cuts has these pens and pencils on it, and it feels almost like an art gallery fabric, but I don't think it's art gallery. This next fat quarter definitely goes with the previous one. They have the same color, the same feel, and yeah, I just feel like these are coordinated together, but I don't know because I don't have the selvages, so I'll have to look that up while I'm editing. This next fat quarter is orange and definitely fall because of the pumpkins, but I love it. Normally, I don't like orange, but I really like this one, and it goes with our next fat quarter, which is here. They're both from the same line. I love the previous one, but this one, not so much. I like the other one though. This is another one that is kind of fall themed, and I'm not hating it. I really like it, but it's got a big print on it, so I don't think I'll be able to use it in this month's block. Then we have this, which is kind of starting to transition us into some blue fat quarters. We've got a beautiful blue blender, a really pretty purple blender, and this really cute pink blender. Lots of blenders in this month's box, as evidenced with this next blender, which is more of like a magenta or a fuchsia color. And then we have our batiks. I really like this one, and it goes with our second batik, which is this one. I love both of the batiks. They're from the Riley Blake batiks. I think this is what I'm going to work with. I'm going to use this to be the background, and then these two to be the dark and the light blue in here. Let's see how that comes together. So I tried to build out the pattern so that we were building the smaller units first, and then we start from the center and build out. You'll notice looking at the diagram, we've got some half square triangle units and some flying geese units, and those are what we're going to work on before we start assembling the block. The flying geese units are a little different. You're going to need 4 total, but 2 of them are going to be flying geese A and 2 are going to be flying geese B. All that means is one set will have D in the upper right hand corner and F in the upper left hand corner, and then in the other set it'll be opposite. So I'm going to build those out. I'm going to show you how I make a flying geese unit with just one, and then you can repeat this for all four. So first up, I need my fabric I, which is the body of my flying geese, my fabric D, and my fabric F, which are going to be the wings. For the first one, I'm going to put D on the right-hand side. And so all I'm going to do is take this and put it right sides together with fabric I. Now, I would recommend taking a ruler and a marking utensil and just drawing a diagonal line from this corner down to this corner, and then just stitching one thread to the right of that line. This is blue fabric, and I don't think I have a marking utensil that's going to show up on camera. And if I'm being honest, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to see it, but I'm going to give it a try. Okay, I can see it. I don't think you can, but I'm going to use that. Once I have my seam sewn, then I'm going to come in with my ruler and rotary cutter. I'm going to cut this off about a 1/4 inch away from that line that I just sewed. Then I'm going to take this over to my pressing station, and I'm going to press this flap up and away from the flying geese unit, just like that. Once that's pressed, I'm going to repeat that on the other side, except this time I want to make sure that the line is coming up from the lower left and hitting in the middle. It should be intersecting the piece we put on previously. So I'm going to draw my line first. I'll lay it right sides together so that the line is coming up to form a triangle. Then I'm just going to stitch like a thread to the right of that line that I drew. As we come back over here, I do want to show you a trick that I use to make sure that my little flap is sewn on correctly. Before I trim off this excess, I can put my finger in between these two layers and just run it up against that seam, and it'll fold it back. What I'm looking for is this piece that is now folded up. It should perfectly cover and complete this corner. If it's a little too small, that means that we sewed too far to the left, and if it's too big, that means we sewed too far to the right. This one looked good, so I'm going to trim my seam allowance. And I'll give this a nice hot press too. Now remember, we're going to need 2 units that look exactly like this, and then 2 that look mirror image. So I'm going to go build all those out. Now I've got flying geese A and B all assembled, but I want to give you a tip, and I probably should have done this at the beginning of this step, but better late than never, right? If you find that your Achilles heel in the world of quilting is making flying geese, you can cut the fabric just 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch bigger than what the pattern calls for. For example, this one I cut the body at 4.5 inch by 2.5 inches, and then each of the little wings were cut at 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. If I wanted to step that up a 1/4 inch, I could cut the wings at 2 3/4 inch square, and then cut the body at 4 3/4 by 2 3/4. That'll give me an extra 1/4 inch all the way around on this. I can sew it together as I normally would, and then I can trim it up, making sure that I'm getting a 1/4 inch right at the top of that point, so when I sew it into a quilt, I'm not losing that point. Next up, I'm going to make my half square triangle units, and that's going to use fabric A and fabric E. I only need 4 HSTs all together. So I've cut 2 of fabric A and 2 of fabric E, because every time I put these together, I'm going to produce 2 half square triangle units. So I'm going to pair an A and an E together. And then on the wrong side of one of those fabrics, it doesn't matter which one, I'm going to draw a line from one corner to the other. Now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I am going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of this line. So I should have 2 lines of stitching on each of these pairs. After I have my 2 lines sewn, I'm going to bring this back over to my cutting surface, and I am going to cut right on that line that I drew for both of these sets. And then I'm going to press these so that the seam is going under the darker fabric. And because I like my half square triangle units to come out a bit better, I've always cut these bigger than what's needed and have squared them down. So what that looks like is once I have a half square triangle unit sewn together, I'm going to reference the pattern for the block that I'm making and get the trim size. In this case, I'm going to trim this down to 2.5 inches square. I'm going to bring in a square ruler. I happen to have a small one, which is a little easier to work with for these smaller blocks. And I'm going to find the 45-degree line on that square ruler and put it right on top of the seam where those two fabrics come together. Then I'm going to check to see if I've got fabric extending off of the top and the side where I'm going to cut, as well as past the 2.5 inch mark on the side under the ruler and the bottom under the ruler. If all of that is correct, then I can take my rotary cutter, clean up the one side, clean up the other, turn it around, and do the same thing. Only this time, when I line up the bottom and the side that are underneath the ruler, I am putting those cut edges right at that 2.5 inch mark. Now that I have my sub pieces made, it's time to build out the rows for the center of the block, and then we'll put on our borders and we're literally done. Honestly, the most difficult thing here is just paying attention to the orientation of the fabric. So I have listed diagrams in the pattern that show you exactly what you should make for each row, and I've even labeled the fabric. So I'm going to follow those instructions to build out row 1 first. And so that is going to take a B fabric, a half square triangle unit, and the only half square triangle units I have in this pattern are A and E. I want to set it up so that the opposite fabric is pointing up and to the right. I don't want the two fabrics touching. Then I'm going to take another B square and an H square, and I'm going to sew all of those together. Once this is all sewn together, I'm going to press the seams so that they're going to the right. And then for the next row, they'll go to the left. The row after that, it'll go to the right. The row after that, it'll go to the left. And the reason for that is because then when I go to assemble all of these rows together, I'm going to be able to nest my seams and get really nice points. Let's sew this. The one thing that I do like about working with batik fabrics is they finger press really nicely. Look how flat that lays without even adding any heat. Ah, chef's kiss. I'm going to repeat that same technique for the other 3 rows. I'm just going to lay out the fabric the way the illustration has it set up, and then I'm going to put them on a surface so that they're laid out in the right order and I don't get things mixed up. This might be a great use of a design board. The next row is going to start with a half square triangle unit, then BHB, I'm going to lay out the 3rd row, which is going to be fabric B, H, B, which you'll notice is actually the same as this one, just flipped upside down, I believe. And then the last row is going to be HB, AE, laid out this way, and then B. So I'm going to sew all of these rows together and then join them. If I have done things correctly, I should have a block that's starting to look a little bit like this. You should have your fabric H going in a diagonal line, and then it's kind of framed in by that fabric B. And My rows are pressed in opposite directions, so I should be able to nest those seams quite nicely. If you don't know what nesting seams is, that's basically where the bulk of the seam is going in opposite directions. And so when I place the fabric right sides together, that bulk can butt up against each other and prevent either side from slipping too far over. Once you feel that that is nested the right way, you could put a clip or a pin here or just hold it. And then you're going to sew that whole row. You could take the time to pin or clip every seam. I just hold one, sew through it, then I nest the next intersection, sew through it, and I nest the final intersection. If this were a longer row, I probably would have taken the time to pin, but because it's just a small block, I didn't feel like I needed to do that. So this is my top half of the block. We're just going to keep adding the rows onto it. And this is what the center of my block looks like once it's all sewn together. For the most part, my points are actually looking really good. There might be a couple that are off. I'm looking to see if they are. Ah, yes, I do have one. Right here, this intersection is not absolutely perfect. And the only reason why I looked for that to point it out is because I want you to notice that you don't really see it. So give yourself a little bit of grace if your points aren't absolutely perfect. I promise you, especially if you're using prints, by the time you get everything pieced, get the quilt put together and have it quilted and it's been washed and loved a little bit, nobody's going to notice something that small. I think the saying is, if you can't see it 30 feet away on a galloping horse, don't worry about it. I don't have a galloping horse, so I'm going to tell you, if you don't see it when I hold it up in front of the camera, then we're not going to worry about it. I love how a block looks after it's freshly pressed, especially batiks. There's just something about batik fabrics. There's the center. All right, now we're going to build out our top, bottom, and side borders. So I'm going to set this beautiful block aside. I'm going to grab my pattern and I'm going to follow the section to build out the borders. It's basically going to be the same thing. It's just we're going to have different fabric on either side. So for the top and bottom, we're going to take fabric C and then the Flying Geese unit that has D in the upper left-hand corner, and then fabric G. We're going to sew those together. And then for the left and right borders, we're going to take H and then the other two Flying Geese and then fabric B, and we're going to sew these together. Just like that, easy peasy. All right, now I'm going to attach my side borders and then my top and bottom, and I'm done. We just have to remember how the block is oriented. So you may need to pull out your diagram and look at the layout and make sure that your block is laying in the right position. And this is what your block will look like if it is oriented the right way. You'll have fabric H in the upper right-hand corner and fabric H in the lower left-hand corner. And this is why it's important. If I bring in my side border pieces, we're going to have the Flying Geese pointing into the block, and we put the other side on over here. What I'm doing is starting to build out that opposite X, that opposite jewel that's coming together. You'll see it a bit more if I put the top and bottom borders in their places. See how that's starting to come together? Now I'm just going to separate this a little bit so I can manipulate the fabric. You can kind of see the element coming together, but if I have this block turned a different way, if I have it turned 90 degrees the wrong way, you're not going to get the design that's intended. It looks cool, but it's not the block that we intended to make. So if you have something that looks like your outer X is going off into infinity, you probably have your center block turned 90 degrees the wrong way. So let's put it back the way it's supposed to go, and we're going to sew our borders on. I'm just going to press the seams whichever direction they feel like they want to go. The fabric is telling me that it wants the seams to go out away from the center, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sew on the top and bottom. And there we have our finished crisscross block. I love it. I cannot believe how easy this block comes together. Honestly, it's just a couple of half square triangle units, a couple of flying geese units with opposite fabrics for wings, and then everything else is a square or rectangle, and it's just straight line piecing. The only thing you have to be careful with this is just the orientation of your fabric. But if you pay close attention to the diagrams and the pattern that I've created for you, you should be just fine. Thank you, friends, for hanging out with me and sewing. I can't believe this is block number 11. We only have one more block to go in the series before we're going to be able to put our whole quilt together. I like to end each one of these installments in the entire series by showcasing 20 blocks from the previous month that caught my eye. So let's roll that beautiful block footage.